Great, so I'm getting really close to a finished product here. I know that there are a few loose ends to tie up because I set this up the way that I did. I know how to tackle those in a really streamlined way. What I want to do right now is deal with that athlete that's still in the background, because a lot of those edges around there are bugging me, and I need to basically extract him from the background completely, wipe him out of there so there's no edges around my foreground athlete. And this is kind of a big wow moment. I'm going to show you how to use a couple tools in conjunction that make removing this guy from this background pretty easy and fast. Check it out. All right, cool. So first I'm going to run frequency separation on my background. Six looks good for me right here. I just want to wipe off any sort of surface grain or detail. Click OK. I'm going to load the silo, expand the selection, like, 10 pixels is all right. And with the lasso tool, I'm going to grab the laces here to make sure they're included, because I want to get all this stuff out of here. Make sure nothing's left outside the selection. All right, I'm gonna just feather that selection by like 4 pixels just to ease it back a little bit. And on my low layer, I'm gonna use this magical feature called Content Aware Fill. Now what I just did was hit Shift F5. You can also go to Edit Fill, choose Content Aware, and pray to the Photoshop gods that it removes this athlete from the background. All right. It looks like kind of a crazy cubist painting back here behind him, but that did a hell of a lot of work in like 0 time for me. And I can clean that up because I've got that as part of a frequency separation. I don't really care what's back here. I'm not trying to create a completely clean background. I'm just trying to create a fairly clean surface that my athlete that I've got completely extracted can sit on top of. So let me turn this on and off, and you can see that all the laces and all the edges up here completely disappeared because Content Aware pretty much knew that I wanted all of these pixels that meet all this different related criteria, that I wanted all those out of there. So that's pretty cool. I use that a lot, and you should think about how to integrate it into your frequency separation workflow. So let's turn that on and off because I have that on my low layer. And see, now my edges are all sharp, but that's good because I have complete control of my edges. They're all on that silo mask, and I can deal with those in a few minutes. So I need to look around. I'm going to turn off the high because that's kind of distracting right now. And I'm going to turn this on and off just to see if any halos were introduced, which there were, but hey, we got Magic Mixer Brush. So we can just take care of those, sweep them under the rug. Piece of cake. You know, anywhere you see an edge, now, I was kind of just thinking about this, the whole conceptual framework around this style of retouching is you probably initially look at this image with this athlete in it and not think of it as a composite. And it's almost like we're decompositing the whole image. And this is what I meant initially about the completely deconstructed image, is it looks like it's fully intact, like it's a single authentic photograph, but it's actually been completely taken apart. But the trick is nobody can tell. All right, and I'm just going to keep going around and quickly and easily cleaning up any of these little edge weirdos with the mixer brush. Now, remember what I said early on about the shadows? I want to see if I can maybe salvage these because they were from the previous shoe, and I don't want to paint any new shadows if I don't have to. I can, but like I could if I wanted to. But this is pretty easy. And once again, I'm not going to fixate on this right now. I'm just going to see if I can salvage any of this information and just get it tucked in there, and later I'll refine these once we get into our finishing stages. Funny, not a lot of people know about Mixer Brush and how awesome it is, but even fewer when they see it the first time really get struck initially by the sheer power of it. But the more you see me use it in 150 different situations, you start to see the pure versatility of this tool when used in this system. I mean, I just can't say enough about it. It's got to be one of my favorite developments and advances that's been made in retouching in a long time. All right, I think I started here. That's pretty clean. Now, unfortunately, we've got to go around a second time. But once again, that's okay. Think about the alternative. It would be like hours of tedium with cloning and trying to get it perfectly just to tuck in the edges. This is really easy. Yeah, the reason I have to go around a second time is because there's going to be some information left on the high that I want to trim off. And I can't use content aware fill on the high because it just doesn't work. But this is really easy because of the fact that we're working again, in this separated workflow, I don't have to really care about what I'm sampling from at all, as long as it's just kind of similar to the target, it'll look fine. Yeah, this pass around on the high actually almost goes faster than the one we did on the low. There's a little bit of detail being held here. You just want to sample from a position that's in line with these, whatever details you're trying to continue behind the shape. You can still be pretty sloppy here and get high quality work. Now you can really see I'm just sampling in pretty much grain. That's it. Because that's what gets extracted to the high layer when we do our separation. It's a little weird spot there. Oh, you're probably wondering what's going on with the hair. When it comes to athletic images, lots of times the leg hair isn't really, I mean, for me, I don't think really an important like positive feature of an athlete image. If it looks, you know, not real, we can bring some of that back a little bit later, but lots of times trimming off leg hair is pretty much okay as long as it doesn't look super fake or anything. So oh, and there's that pesky shoelace that's been kicking in there for a few rounds now. I'm going to go back in and take that out in just a minute. All right, we got it pretty well cleaned up. Before I forget, let's go back into the base separation and get that out of there. Once again, that takes no time at all. I don't have to worry about any careful cloning. I actually don't think I did any skin cleanup on these legs, but it's so easy to do right now. mean, this is a good point. I try to move through the image in a really linear fashion so I don't forget stuff, but I definitely do forget stuff. And I have to go back later. But since I've developed this system that's so modular and so non-destructive that I don't screw myself by forgetting a step, because I've done that in the past, and that's what this system arose out of, is necessity and high quality workflow. So I know that I don't have to waste a lot of time going back and fixing anything that I've like baked into flattened pixel layer because I needed to flatten up or something. Anytime you're watching retouching videos and somebody goes, now it's time to flatten up, that should be a big red flag to you that that's a problem. I mean, I don't want to make too broad of a proclamation there, but in general, that's shoddy workflow. So the alternative is having a really complicated file setup just like this. There are a lot of different ways of working and retouching. Once you've seen how this system works, you'll be able to choose for yourself. All right, I'm going to switch to the low and just do a little bit of polishing on the ankles here. This should be really fast because there's not a whole lot of anatomy information in the lower legs. And basically cylinders. So we'll just clean them off really fast. I did tuck the edges under by the color changes I did, but I didn't do the low polishing. Yeah, so the calves, after I did the low polishing on that, they're looking a little soft. I'm going to add some texture back in there using my chalk brush. See how that works? It's a little heavy, but let's dial it back to a low flow. See how 20 works. Too much. Can even go down to 5 flow. And changing the size of the brush. All right, that's a good start. I may go in and, yeah, those are looking a little brushy still. It's either splotchy or brushy. I go back to my mixer brush. make it a bit smaller. And the problem with that was that I made the blotches that existed in the skin, which add an element of authenticity. I made them too big and too soft. So what I'm going to do with my mixer brush is try to add back in a little bit of that blotchiness, which may seem counterintuitive, but it's important to creating a believable skin surface. It's having some kind of blotches. Once again, we just want them to be uniform. And you know what I'm going to do? Is add a mask on my low layer, change to my regular brush, low opacity, 20%, and I'm going to bring back just a touch by painting in here of the original blotches that were on the leg. Just to bring back that variation, I'll turn that mask on and off. You can see it. Too smooth, more in reality, but better than that. So before I can move on to mood and grade, I need to take a look at the shirt and the panels on the tights because they're a little bit out of whack. The darks are too dark, they're a little bit too neutral. The shoes look good. I'm going to match them to the shoes and get a good balance before I move forward. So I'm going to drag out my info palette. We're going to take a look at some of the other dark objects in the image. The ship back here is in the hue range of H, and what I do is I change this to HSB so I can start taking a look at the color values, and the hue value is a really great indicator of what I need to push my hue values in the things that I've changed to. So it's around the 210 range, 210 plus. Looking at some of these, what should be gray back here, everything's kind of cool. Now, if I look at the values here in the shirt, the panels, the H value is 0. That way, I know that they're completely neutral. Now, I did that on purpose, just to get it in there and make sure there was no crazy color shifts happening. But we don't want absolute neutral in these because there's an overall cool color cast. In this case, I'm going to match them to the existing cast that's in the image and then globally make changes to the color once everything's aligned. So in the shirt, we go into the hue sat. And instead of setting it to completely desaturate, I'm going to click on colorize. And I'm going to move the slider right around that 210 range. But I don't want it super saturated. Well, check it out. You can tell it already looks a lot better in the space. But I want to desaturate that down. Yeah, maybe 8. So let's do before and after. Very neutral. Much better integrated. Let's do the same thing with the tights panel and align the two. Colorize. Around 210. You don't need to be exact, you can ballpark it. Bring the saturation down. So that's a lot better. They're aligning in terms of the hue, but I think the black is still running a little rich. It's a little too dark. See how these are a little bit washed out? If you look at the B value when I'm measuring the boat, it's up around 19 and 20. But down here in the shirt, those are running about 3%. So instead of adjusting the curves that I've already made, in this case, I'm just going to bring up a new curve and clip off the black point a little bit to bring this closer to that of the boat. And this is another thing we can just kind of eyeball. Now at the same time, I like what's happening in the halftones. So I'm going to add a point to my curve to anchor that. And just clip the black down a little bit. That's already sitting in a lot better. Maybe a tad too much. Or I can add another point here into the 3/4. So I'm really just flattening out the darkest blacks. I'm going to duplicate that same curve down to the tights panels and put it in that value folder. That did a nice job of flattening those out. Alright, that looks a lot better. These darks are a lot more aligned with the rest of the darks in the image. So I'm ready to move on to the rest of the finishing steps. Let's tidy up here. Close up our groups. I really want to go in now and get a little bit closer and deal with these mask edges, because that's another big thing that's holding us back from complete integration. Let's start with some of the internal masks. I'm going to hit the shirt. See if I can just add a feather onto it. Get it to sit in a little bit better. .8 looks about right for now. Let's move on to the arms. I'm going to match that 0.8. See how it just nicely snaps in there once we add a little bit of softness to that mask edge. Shorts. Take a little bit of that edge off. Tights. You're going to see this happen where they meet the leg. And the tights panels. Everything's starting to come together. Let's see what goes on with the shoes. Not bad. Pretty good. Everything's really clicking together except for the silo. Let's put that at about a 0.8. Starting to look pretty good. I'm seeing a couple more edges come in here. Let's see if I can take care of that real quick. In this image, I was able to use the same value to feather those mask edges on each mask. That was because everything needed to be pretty much the same softness. But what I see now, and you got to keep an eye out for this, is I introduced some edges by doing that. So once again, we got to go back in and clean those out. Now, believe me, this is a hell of a lot easier than the traditional way. The reason that we're able to soften all these mask edges and not have total chaos is because we set it up in this really modular fashion. But some edges do introduce into the system once you start softening things, but that's okay because we've set it up in a way we can always fix it. I'm going to go into the arms group and go back to my FS because I see these guys down here. I'm going to turn off that high and tuck anything I see back under. I'm going to go up to 100 opacity just because I want to get this done fast. Fast but still clean. All right, cool. Turn the high back on. There's one right here. Oh, right. That's actually in our base. Boom. Disappears. All right, that's looking good. Now, you might notice that he's got a pretty close trim here on the beard and on his hair. I'm not going to paint those in or anything like that. I'm going to actually pull those from a channel. Let's look through the channels, see which one provides the best contrast between the foreground and background. In this case, probably green. Let's duplicate that channel. And I'm going to bring up a curve and apply a curve to this copy I just made. This is the process that I use to create a channel mask. I'm going to add contrast. Try not to destroy too much information right here along the edge. And try not to fill in too much by dragging up the black point. Using the dodge and burn tools, you can adjust your mask. Now, dodge and burn tools I use only for mask manipulation. They were originally created with the intention that they be used on pixel layers to dodge and burn stuff, but that's destructive editing, and clearly we don't do any of that anymore. So the best thing that they're used for now, and they're really powerful, is to manipulate masks. So I'll show you real quick how to use those on my channel to create a really good mask. I'm going to trim off some of the edge information here from his chin hair just to create a nice edge. Now, up here in his hair, it wasn't quite as dark as the chin. I'm going to use a lasso. Outline the area of the hair that I want to increase contrast with a curve. And crank it up until I get a little bit more density. Drop that. I'm going to go use my burn tool to fill that in so I have a nice solid mask edge. I'm going to use that a little bit on the chin here. Alright, that's good. I'm going to invert this channel. And do a little bit more dodging inside the hair up here to make sure it's clean. Those are good for me. I'm going to set that as a selection by holding down Command and clicking that channel. Go back to my work, back to my silo mask, Command H to hide that selection, and I'm going to paint into my mask with my brush, regular brush, on white, 100%. Oops. Let's be a little bit more careful at the edge here. So now I've got all my masks really finessed. I've got a nice mask edge for the chin hair and the hair on his head. So I'm totally set up to move into the mood and grade now.